So we're on section 10.3, reconciling the bank statement. So how do you reconcile your bank statement? And what is a bank statement? Well, in the mail, you should get, if you have a checking account or savings account, you should get a bank statement and they'll tell you what checks have gone through the bank, right? That's what a bank statement's about. Now, a lot of times now you do it online. You actually have a PIN or a number you can get online, security number that you get on, and you can find out your account online. But this is the bank. This is the picture of the account that's either, in your bank account as you go in with your security code, their number to get in there, and so you can see those checks that have cleared, right, in your account. The bank also will return in the mail your canceled checks. Well, these days they seem to not return the canceled checks they used to, but they do give you copies of them. And they'll also record those checks that have been cashed. The bank statement is going to be in chronological listing. That means by numbers. So sometimes the numbers can be off if you didn't use the checks and numbers, that's for sure. So, but the checks, their numbers will be basically going by your check numbers here. All the different check numbers right here, check number, I'm sorry. And then, so you can see which checks have cleared. Now, if you don't do your checks by numbers, then they'll have a skip space, and your check numbers will be kind of, a little bit irate by your date times, But anyway, so the difference here is that you have to find out which checks, and you check those checks off on your check register that have cleared. Just check them off, and then the ones that are left, the ones that have not been cashed yet, maybe people are holding on to them a quite long time, or they just have not been cashed, they will not have checks by them because you didn't check them off. So you'll be able to find out your outstanding checks, those checks that are not cashed yet, or service charges. As you look on here, you might have a service charge for something, and you can look and see, like you might have a service charge that they charged for, if you had insufficient funds, or if you had a service charge for more checks, or a service charge or an interest payment. Those things will be in here too. So you'll be able to reconcile this with your register, with your check register. So, and if they do not agree, then you have to figure out, did you make a mistake or did the bank make a mistake? And banks do make mistakes sometimes. And so it's really important that you reconcile this with your register to balance out. We call this balancing your checkbook, to make sure that the bank hasn't taken out too much money, or or someone hasn't cashed their check that you gave them, or other problems that you could have, or that you've made mistakes on your check register. So you reconcile your new balance by finding the total outstanding checks from the register. Find out which checks are outstanding, people still have, they haven't been cashed yet. Any deposits that are not shown on the register, outstanding deposit. Maybe you deposited some money and it hasn't been written yet, so you need to put that in too to balance it. So let me show you, and then find out if they don't agree. So let me show you. Here's a better way to show on this page here. So here's a model there. So up here it says your bank. You have the bank balance. The bank balances says you have, $430.16, but you have outstanding checks of $150 that add up to $150. And so that means, basically that your bank balance is going to, or outstanding deposits, you have outstanding deposits, so your bank balance is going to be higher. Now you subtract your outstanding checks here, and then you find the balance. So you're going to subtract. So they'll give you, actually they give you on when they send you your bank register here from the bank, they'll have a place where you can reconcile. So you can see. So here's bank balance, any deposits that you've made. Now, any checks that are outstanding, you write down those numbers. And then you're going to have to subtract that, from the bank balance, because you have to subtract this because they haven't subtracted those yet. And then you adjust the balance, and this is what the balance is. And then the checkbook balance is this, and any interest earned, no. Any bank charges, oh, yep, there were some bank charges, so we had to subtract that. And so that's what's in our bank right now. That's how you reconcile or balance your checkbook. And it's pretty important that you do that. So they're going to give you, I think, a checkbook to balance on your test. And they're just going to tell you what the checks are. So you make sure you subtract the checks from that amount, what extra deposits that you deposit that are not on there. So you're going to add the deposits, subtract the checks on there to see what you have, or any interests or any bank charges. And this will reconcile your checkbook. And you'll know exactly, reconciling your checkbook and finding out, balancing your checkbook will tell you exactly what's in how much money you have in the bank right at that day, that point that you balance it. So that's pretty important for you to do. So let's go on to section 4. It's on borrowing money now. So I just really like this. I'm going to read part of it to you because it's important that we just don't think, oh, we can just go out and borrow money. And some people think, well, I can borrow all this money and then they can just declare bankruptcy. But what does the Bible say about it, So it says, let me read this. It says, although debt has become as American as Uncle Sam and apple pie, debt is not normal for a Christian. God warns us in Proverbs 22:7 that the borrower is servant to the lender. God's position on Christian filing for bankruptcy to avoid repaying a loan is found in Psalm 37:21, where we are told it is wicked not to repay a loan. Before borrowing money, buying on credit, or accepting any debt, remember that your signature or your word is a promise to pay all that you owe, plus any agreed interest. Ecclesiastes 5:5 says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. If you understand your duty to repay, you will not enter into any debt very lightly. So, before you accept a loan from a bank, or finance company, or a credit union, or any institution that makes loans, be sure you understand the responsibility you have to repay that loan on time and set up some guidelines for borrowing money. Know that you can repay the loan without undue stress. If it's no undue stress on your family, do not borrow with the plan to repay. Like, I'm going to get a raise so I can repay them, or I'm going to get some money, I'm going to get an inheritance so I can repay. Do not get a loan on. You may not get that inheritance. You may not get that bonus. And borrow for your needs, not just your wants. Yes, we need to buy a house sometimes, and that's an important need. But not just go out and just buy whatever you want, all the expensive things that you would like to have. Here you'll get yourself in trouble. Do not borrow money to pay for an item if repaying the loan will take longer than the item is expected to last. Say that you buy a boat, or maybe not a boat. Buy something that's going to deteriorate it right away. Boats don't always deteriorate right away, but that's going to depreciate right away, and you're going to lose your money. Then don't take out a loan on that. Shop around for the best interests. It's really important when you look at interests, and they'll fool you sometimes, and that's what we're going to talk about. So, in order to borrow money, you must complete a credit application, which contains information about a prospective buyer, including any financial data, such as your income and your savings, any possessions you have. They'll look at those things. Do you have a home? Do you own a home? You have an automobile? Are you working? That's another thing. So that they can get their money back, right? So then to make the loan, the borrower, you must sign a promissory note. Here's an example of a promissory note. It says void on here, of course, because I don't want you to use it, but it's in the book. A promissory note, here's what it looks like. That you, to the order of your bank, whatever, how much money, this is $850 borrowed by First American Bank for the value received at an interest at 15%. That's really 15% interest. That's pretty high interest there, I think. But anyway, and then you'll get this promissory note that you have promised, you have signed this note that you have to repay what you borrowed. So the signature. So that's pretty important. But now let's look at another thing that's really important is how do we calculate out interest? Well, before we go to interest, there's a couple other things here we're talking about. And one here, as you can see, is we're going to talk about the simple interest formula. And the simple interest formula is very important. Before we even do that, there's different kinds of loans, a couple different kinds of loans. One is a signature loan. A signature loan with your signed can be an unsecured loan. That means they're just taking your signature that you're going to pay it back by your credit. But there's also secured loans, especially when you're buying things like automobiles and houses. A secured loan is when you sign it out that your assets that you own, they could come and take them from you, right? If you don't pay off. So a secured loan is secured by collateral. And what is collateral? Collateral is those things that you own. So you have a loan for a house, and then you own things. You own the house. They can come and take your house. You have a loan for a car. They could come and take your car. So whatever they have, they could come as collateral, the backup. And sometimes when you have another person sign your loan, that just means that they can come and take what they have too. So when you have a cosigner, that cosigner is responsible. So if you don't pay your loan, your cosigner is going to have to pay it. That's why a lot of people will not cosign loans. Do not cosign a loan for anyone. That's what I say. So unsecured loans or signature loans. Just remember that. A loan using collateral might be like a mortgage loan. That would be a mortgage loan. The amount that you borrow is going to be called the principal that you borrow. So it's always called the principal. So let's look at this formula and you're going to have to know this over and over and over and over. So don't forget this formula. Okay, what is the formula? The formula, and it's basically the simple interest formula is interest equal PRT. So I is interest, P is the principal. That's how much you're borrowing. The rate is always a percent. The percent or the interest, and the T is the time, and the time is always in years. So if it's quarterly or if it's semi-annually, it'd be half a year, or 0.25 for a quarter. So principal is the amount borrowed, the rate of interest is the percent of interest, and the time is the length of the loan in years. It's always in years. So you always have to make sure it's in years, not in parts of a year, right? So now it says, for short-term loans, money may be borrowed for days or months. Since the time in the simple interest formula is in terms of years, money borrowed for 3 months would be written as 1/4 year, or 0.25. Say that you had 50 days, then you'd write 50 over 365, and then you would try to make it smaller fraction. But it is always in. It has to always be in years for this interest. I equal PRT. Just remember, that's very important. And so, in fact, here's some of your model problems here. Let's just take this, and these are going to have a lot of these problems. So, you'll get used to this PRT form. So, Reginald Potts borrowed $1,500 from the bank at 13% interest. He signed a promissory note to repay the principal plus interest at the end of 1 year. How much would he owe the bank? Okay, let's look here. We got interest equal PRT. So you say P is that's how much he's borrowing, 1,500. The rate is at 13%. You always turn it to a decimal, which would be 0.13, and then times how many years? 1 year. And then as you do this, you do it on your calculator right now if you want, but it will turn up to $195 will be the interest. So you're going to have to pay, in the end, you're going to have to pay the principal, which is the principal would be, this principal is $1,500 plus the interest, which will equal, you'll have to end up paying $1,695. So that's your question for that one. And then here's another one. Samantha Dumit borrowed $1,200 from a bank at 15% interest for 45 days. Find the amount she will owe at the end of 45 days. Now look, we don't have a year, so we're going to have to figure this out. The principal is $1,200. The interest is 15%, which is 0.15. You'll always change percent to a decimal. And then she put 45 over 365. And so in finding this, basically what you can reduce this fraction, or you can use it on a calculator, and then you'll find what the interest is by multiplying these three things. She got $22.19. So now she knows she's She has to repay the whole loan, which is $1,200 plus $22.19. So 45 days is 45 over 365. And so that here, you got to find out exactly what fraction that is to multiply it. They didn't do it on this, but you'll be doing that. So that's going on to borrowing. Here's some examples that you'll be doing. You'll see how to find the amount of interest to be paid. You'll have the principal, you'll have the interest, and you'll have the time, and you're just going to be multiplying these across here to get your answer. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and here's some questions here. A loan using real estate as collateral is called a mortgage loan. Okay? Just remember that. It's called a mortgage loan. And on to the amount borrowed is called the principal. An unsecured loan is called a signature loan. Unsecured loan is called a signature loan. A responsible borrower might borrow money to buy a house. You know, a responsible buyer might borrow money. You don't borrow money for groceries, and you don't borrow money for clothes, but a house is, you have to have a house. A probable annual rate of interest for an unsecured loan. So a probable rate of interest for an unsecured loan, around about 15, never 51%, that's way too high. And these are very small. It's usually around 15%, which I think is pretty high. So some questions here. We're going to go on to do a quiz, go over the quiz on this section, and then we'll go on to the next, which would be installment plans. And installment plans, they can really chip you out a lot of money, really. Installment plans.